Brewer's yeast is a nutrient-rich food with many health benefits. This budding yeast is good for the gut and it may boost energy and immunity. However, it has some side effects, so it's not good for everyone. Brewer's yeast was originally produced as a byproduct of beer brewing and it has a bitter taste. Nowadays, it's dried and it's used as a nutritional supplement. Specifically, it's made from Saccharomyces cerevisiae, a type of yeast that's been used in brewing and baking since ancient times. Saccharomyces cerevisiae has a wide array of purported benefits, such as lowering cholesterol, enhancing the immune system, and decreasing inflammation. Brewer's yeast can refer to the active form of Saccharomyces cerevisiae that's used for brewing, the leftover Saccharomyces cerevisiae from the brewing process that's used as a supplement. This type has a strong bitter flavour, or Saccharomyces cerevisiae that was grown on grain. Supplemental brewer's yeast is typically grown on a medium of corn and other types of grain. Brewer's yeast is high in protein, B vitamins, and chromium. Some of the newer, debittered forms don't have chromium. However, the nutritional profile varies depending on the grain on which the yeast is grown, how it's processed, and whether it's been fortified with added nutrients. In general, Saccharomyces cerevisiae has B vitamins, minerals, protein, probiotics, prebiotics, anti-inflammatory and immune stimulants, nicotinamide riboside, nucleotides being DNA and RNA, and ergosterol. Out of all the ingredients, the most interesting one to many modern researchers is beta-glucans, nicotinamide riboside, and the DNA and RNA nucleotides. Nucleotides in whole foods have recently been associated with increased energy and possibly even improved cognitive function. Brewer's yeast and nutritional yeast are close relatives, so it's easy to confuse them. Nutritional yeast is also made from Saccharomyces cerevisiae. The difference is how the yeast is cultivated. Their nutritional profile is also similar. Both are rich in B vitamins, which support the metabolism of carbohydrates, fats, and protein. Unlike nutritional yeast, brewer's yeast is also high in iron, selenium, zinc, and potassium. Brewer's yeast is also a good source of protein, providing essential amino acids that the body doesn't make by itself. Although nutritional yeast is also a good source of protein and B vitamins, it contains little to no chromium. It's usually fortified with vitamin B12 and folic acid. Unlike brewer's yeast, nutritional yeast has always been cultivated specifically for its nutrition. It's grown on a glucose medium, making it gluten-free. Depending on the medium that it's grown, brewer's yeast may contain gluten. Nutritional yeast is Saccharomyces cerevisiae that's grown solely for supplemental use. It's usually fortified with vitamin B12 and folic acid. Brewer's yeast and nutritional yeast are both Saccharomyces cerevisiae, but the brewer's yeast is a byproduct of grain fermentation, while nutritional yeast was grown specifically for supplemental use, and it's often fortified with B vitamins. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is believed to promote gut health by clearing away bad bacteria while supporting good bacteria, by preventing harmful bacteria and fungal toxins from sticking to the intestines, by preserving gut barrier integrity, by decreasing inflammation, and by fighting infections. Many of these effects are mediated by the presence of prebiotics in the Saccharomyces cerevisiae, such as beta-glucans, mannan oligosaccharides, as well as nucleotides. Brewer's yeast improved the outcome of Clostridium difficile associated diarrhea in humans, but the evidence is limited to a few individual cases. However, brewer's yeast lacks the probiotic effects, such as the enhanced nutrient absorption and the additional gut microbiome benefits. These are limited to supplements with live Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Saccharomyces boulardii is the only variant of the yeast currently approved for probiotic use in humans because of its clinical effectiveness in treating diarrhea, and other gut disorders. Brewer's yeast is naturally rich in glucose tolerance factor, a compound that contains a biologically active form of chromium. Glucose tolerance factor decreases blood sugar, triglycerides, and LDL or bad cholesterol levels, and it increased the levels of HDL or good cholesterol in rats and humans with type 2 diabetes. It also prevented kidney and eye damage in diabetic rats. Glucose tolerance factors achieve these effects by mimicking insulin. It can activate proteins involved in insulin signaling pathways, enhance glucose transport, promote glycogen storage. Glucose tolerance factor also enhances the activity of insulin, helping it to bind to cells. Though some human studies have produced promising results, much more research is required to determine whether brewer's yeast has a role in managing diabetes. Brewer's yeast contains glucose tolerance factor, a compound that decreased blood sugar and improved cholesterol profile in human trials. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is a natural dietary source of nucleotides. Nucleotides enhanced endurance and post-workout recovery in athletes, and this may indicate a use for brewer's yeast in reducing fatigue. Patients with chronic fatigue syndrome are often deficient in many nutrients, and this can worsen their symptoms. A nutritional supplement based on brewer's yeast improved the cognitive function and the mood in chronic fatigue syndrome patients. The authors suggested that brewer's yeast may be a useful treatment for this poorly understood disorder. Brewer's yeast contains lithium, an element traditionally used to treat mood disorders. Naturally lithium-rich brewer's yeast improved mood in former drug users, and nutrients in brewer's yeast may reduce fatigue and improve the recovery after physical exercise. Cosmetic products containing a Saccharomyces cerevisiae extract improve skin moisture, brightness, and smoothness in volunteers. These results could be explained by the abundant proteins, beta-glucans, vitamins, and minerals in the Saccharomyces cerevisiae. These components are thought to have wound healing, hydrating, and antioxidant properties. In a study of 54 obese men and women, yeast hydrosylate reduced the body weight and the stomach fat without any negative effects on the lean body mass. These results coincide with data from previous animal and human studies showing decreased body weight and body fat after yeast hydrosylate supplement. Yeast hydrosylate is a nutritional supplement with processed and concentrated Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and brewer's yeast might not have the same effects on the weight loss. The yeast from Saccharomyces cerevisiae reduces the hunger hormone ghrelin in mice, and this may partly explain the loss in the body weight in these trials. It also decreases fat production by reducing the activity of liver enzymes that are required for making fatty acids. In addition, nicotinamide riboside, found in brewer's yeast, increases the enzymes involved in fat burning and energy use, thereby increasing weight loss. Dietary brewer's yeast is under investigation for its potential against heart disease because it has improved cholesterol and blood pressure levels in animals and humans. Brewer's yeast contains many cholesterol-lowering vitamins and minerals, like beta-glucan, niacin, nicotinamide riboside, and glucose tolerance factor. Consuming brewer's yeast daily lowered the LDL cholesterol and triglyceride levels, and it increased HDL cholesterol in a small study on 55 type 2 diabetic patients with high blood cholesterol. Aside from lowering cholesterol, brewer's yeast may also reduce blood pressure. One study in 90 adults with type 2 diabetes found that brewer's yeast significantly lowered the blood pressure. The high amounts of potassium, magnesium, and calcium in the brewer's yeast may explain this reduction in the blood pressure. According to some studies, a greater intake of these minerals can reduce the risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. Brewer's yeast also contains proteins that help to decrease blood pressure by decreasing the activity of the angiotensin converting enzyme ACE. Higher activity of this enzyme is linked to high blood pressure. Brewer's yeast has not been approved for the purpose of lowering cholesterol and shouldn't be used in the place of strategies and therapies recommended by your doctor. Brewer's yeast supplementation did improve cholesterol profile and lowered blood pressure in clinical studies though. Brewer's yeast is a natural source of nicotinamide riboside, a form of vitamin B3 that's a precursor to nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, or NAD. Nicotinamide riboside safely raised the levels of NAD in animals and humans. Higher levels of NAD protect nerve cells, and they may prevent neurodegenerative diseases, such as increasing NAD levels with nicotinamide riboside restored the cognitive function in a mouse model of Alzheimer's disease. In addition, nicotinamide riboside slowed nerve degeneration by stimulating the NAD pathways, which may help to preserve brain cells after an injury. More human studies will be required to determine what effects the brewer's yeast might consistently have on cognitive function and neural health. Nutrients in brewer's yeast increased NAD, which is a marker of cognitive function, in a small human trial. However, brewer's yeast supplementation has not been directly linked to cognition yet. Brewer's yeast in combination with vitamins and minerals relieve premenstrual pain in 40 women with mild to moderate premenstrual syndrome. Beta-glucans, which are sugars found in the cell wall of yeast, bacteria, and fungi, can activate the immune system. They enhance the function of the main immune system cells, including macrophages, neutrophils, and natural killer cells. Beta-glucans bind to specific receptors on these cells, initiating a wide variety of beneficial immune responses, such as anti-inflammatory cytokine production. However, not all beta-glucans are equal. Beta-glucans derived from different sources have unique structures that result in different effects. Cell research indicates that beta-glucans from yeast have the greatest capacity to activate the immune system. Beta-glucans derived from Saccharomyces cerevisiae have shown promising results, including reduced incidence of bacterial, viral, and fungal infection in mice and humans, decreased allergy symptoms in mice and humans, reduced occurrence of post-operative infection in animals and humans, decreased inflammation and faster wound healing in animals and humans, reduced rate of cancer tumor size and growth in animals, increased regeneration of white blood cells after radiation therapy in mice, and decreased inflammation in mouse models of arthritis. Nicotinamide riboside, a form of vitamin B3 found in the brewer's yeast, prevented noise-induced hearing loss in mice. It relieved nerve cell damage caused by the noise exposure. The effect has not yet been reproduced or even tested in humans. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is a rich dietary source of folate, a vitamin that helps to prevent major birth defects. Oxidative stress is a major cause of high blood pressure in pregnancy, and it results in complications to the mother and the fetus. Saccharomyces cerevisiae reduced the oxidative stress in the maternal cord red blood cells, and the author suggested that it may be useful in reducing oxidative damage to the fetus. However, this was a cell study, and their hypothesis has not been tested in living animals or humans yet. While the requirements for folate during pregnancy is well established, the effect of brewer's yeast on pregnant women and their unborn children has not. If you're pregnant, you should talk to a doctor about whether brewer's yeast could be appropriate to your diet. Nicotinamide riboside, which is found in brewer's yeast, extended the lifespan of yeast by increasing NAD synthesis and sirtuin activity. It also promoted longevity in mice by improving mitochondrial function. Mitochondrial dysfunction is a key component of aging. People who are allergic to Candida, mold, or yeast may react badly to brewer's yeast. A dietary intake of brewer's yeast may increase the severity of Crohn's disease and celiac disease in patients with antibodies to Saccharomyces cerevisiae. People who have kidney stones and gout should avoid brewer's yeast. Brewer's yeast may also worsen the symptoms in people with eczema. Some brands of brewer's yeast contain gluten and should be avoided by celiac patients. Active yeast used for fermentation, brewing and baking has been observed to cause infections in people with candida or with weakened immune systems. On the other hand, supplemental brewer's yeast, which contains killed Saccharomyces cerevisiae, has no potential to cause or worsen these infections. Brewer's yeast may interact with diabetes medicine and lead to low blood sugar. It has large amounts of tyramine, which can interact with monoamine oxidase inhibitors and cause very high blood pressure. People with the MTHFR polymorphism have a reduced ability to process folic acid completely, and thus they should avoid brewer's yeast fortified with synthetic folic acid. People with mutations in the dectin-1, STAT1, STAT3, TLR4, and CARD9 genes may want to avoid brewer's yeast because those variants are associated with an impaired immunity and an increased risk of fungal and yeast infection. Genetic variants in the mannan-binding lectin, the MBL gene, can lead to mannose-binding lectin deficiency, which is associated with higher anti-Saccharomyces cerevisiae antibody levels in Crohn's disease patients. Brewer's yeast and nutritional yeast is available as a powder, a liquid, or a tablet. People who take brewer's yeast as a supplement often take 1 to 2 tablespoons per day. The powdered form is usually mixed with water. You can also mix it into other beverages, such as juice, or add it to smoothies. Have in mind that it'll add a slightly bitter flavour to the drink. Some people aren't fans of the bitter aroma, but others enjoy it. It really comes down to experimenting with the flavours and finding the combination that you like best. Also be sure to check the quality of the powder or the tablets that you're buying. Powders are generally cheaper, but higher quality supplements are less likely to contain additives or added sugar. Brewer's yeast is a nutrient-rich food with a variety of health benefits, including gut health support and preventing diarrhea. This yeast is high in B vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and other healthy active compounds. Its characteristic bitter flavour can give your smoothie or juice a unique note. People who dislike bitter flavours may not like the taste of brewer's yeast. Some brewer's yeast products contain gluten. If you're sensitive to gluten, search for gluten-free brewer's yeast, such as a type that's grown on sugar beet.